Well, let's get some more analysis now. And we can speak to Renaud Foucart, who is a senior lecturer in economics at Lancaster University in the UK. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. As we heard in that report, this bill is going to go through whatever happens, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to go through, and it was largely expected to go through. Despite not having a majority in Parliament, Emmanuel Macron had a clear majority for that specific reform because he accepted everything that the Conservative Party, Les Républicains, were asking for. So together, they have a majority in the Senate, they have a majority in the Parliament, and he played it relatively safe in the sense that he only tried to make them happy. So I don't know if it's that Macron had difficulties to find agreements with the left or the left refused to, but in the end, the content of the reform is a very traditional right-wing conservative reform that will mostly protect elderly, older workers and will be perceived by people on the left as being largely unfair. But it's going to pass because it has a majority. It was expected to have a majority, and the mobilization was expected to be very high. It was very high, so everyone has been doing everything that was expected. The only big question left tonight, and I think that's what Emmanuel Macron and Elizabeth Borne will be doing in their office right now, is to try to count the votes. Do they have enough votes to pass it directly through Parliament, or do they need to go through the so-called 49.3 procedures, or do they need to make it as an executive order that only a vote in no confidence in the government could cancel? But either way, it's going to go through. He has the majority. It's just very tempting for some people within the Conservative Party on the right not to put their name on that reform because it is very unpopular, as you mentioned, in the French electorate.
It is, but it's kind of unfinished business by Les Républicains. After all, they raised the retirement age from 60 to 62. I mean, 64 isn't a round number either. I mean, it sounds like there's another step to go beyond this, which is eventually to get to the number 65. I mean, that would be more coherent as a number and would put France more in line with other countries. Do you think that's an inevitability as well?
I mean, those kind of things might happen, but it's also largely about symbols. So under the previous government of François Hollande, there was also a pension reform that didn't touch the symbol, the totem of the final age, but that did roughly the same by increasing the number of years that people work. What is so special with the retirement age, and what makes it, I think, so unpopular, that is perceived as unfair because it treats differently people who start working early and people who start working late. And so if you sort of caricature and assume that right-wing voters are more likely to be in the category that is protected when you raise the pension age, you would expect that any further right-wing government coming after Emmanuel Macron may be tempted to raise the pension age to 65, while left-wing parties might try to increase contribution through other means, just like the Touran reform did under François Hollande. Either way, what I don't expect is that in 3 years' time, anyone will be with a serious platform for the presidential election with the idea of really coming back to 62 or 60. I don't think that will be the case in 3 years' time. So today it's unpopular, but when tomorrow there will be a choice between do we want to spend 20 billions lowering the pension age or investing in schools, hospitals, or energetic transition or lowering taxes, I don't think anyone will go seriously for lowering the pension age.
Yeah, of course. How risky is it, do you think, if the government goes down the will force this through whatever happens route? Do you see that as having some risks attached to it as a strategy?
Well, as always, as the Yellow Vest has shown in the past in France, there is always a risk of social unrest. And there was, of course, the demonstrations of this week of this reform have not been as high as what you've seen in 1995, have not been as violent as the Yellow Vest, so it was still pretty organized. But you never know. When people are angry, things can go further. My impression at the moment is that if the reform goes through, there will be still some attempts to go through the legal way, so a motion of no confidence in the government, maybe attempts to go to the Constitutional Court. So this may calm things down, and maybe we will not hear a lot about the reform in the future, but you can never rule out social unrest in those kind of circumstances.
No, but Renaud, we did see fewer people taking part in today's protests. The strikes don't seem to be quite as crippling as they were in previous waves of industrial action. Do you think people are basically just resigned to the fact that they've done what they can, the unions have played all their cards, and this is, unfortunately, the reality everyone's got to face?
there is clearly a sense of inevitability. I mean, as we discussed at the beginning, it was very clear it would happen like that from the beginning. People are tired. There was the time of COVID. There is all the cost of living crisis. I think it's not the ideal time to have like a big spring of demonstration in the street because people are exhausted. The question is, are they exhausted, end up being resigned, and then we don't hear anymore about the reform in subsequent years, which is what I think most people expect to happen, or at some point people get fed up and continue the movement. I would not expect it to happen, but again, you can never rule it out completely.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Renaud Foucart, Senior Lecturer in Economics at Lancaster University in the UK. Thank you.